Here I've got a 2004 YZ450F engine that I'm going to be tearing down. This one had a rod failure on the big end of the rod, which is pretty common for a pretty high hour engine. And the reason I know that is because it's got glitter in the oil filter. The guy that owns this bike actually caught it just in time. He went to do an oil change on it after he rode it that day and noticed oil, or the glitter in the oil. So I'm going to start tearing it down. And this is the same exact procedure for like the YZ, the older YZ250F, WR400, WR450, YFZ450, and the 426, and so on. So these bolts to your oil transfer tube are going to be 12s. And always take the bolt out, put the bolt back in the area where it came out of. Next thing I like to do is pull the timing tensioner out. Then once again, put your bolts back in where you got them out of. This is your first time tearing down one of these engines, or any engine in general. Get yourself Ziploc bags and a Sharpie, and I will show you. I even still do this, even though I've torn down hundreds of these engines. I still do this. That way nothing can go missing, mainly, is my reasoning, and then also it'll stay cleaner, because I like to clean the parts after I take them out and then dry them off, and then I put them into bags individually labeled, so that way it's a lot easier to put it together and you remember where everything goes. So these top valve cover bolts are going to be 5mm Allen heads. Sometimes these can kind of be a little bit tricky to get out of here. Oh, damn. I just stabbed myself. So I'm pulling the cams out. Once you have the timing chain loose, there's no point in trying to put it at top dead center or anything like that, because you're going to be tearing it down anyways, so don't worry about that. These things are only supposed to have like 7 foot-pounds of torque on them. Holy crap. Oh. Yeah, see, that is not supposed to be that tight. That right there is a perfect example why you use a torque wrench on this stuff. Oh my god. Those are way over tightened. Oh crap. When you take these off, don't lose your cam keepers. These go right here, so that way when it's reassembled, it keeps the camshaft from walking side to side. So make sure you don't lose these. This is all the type of stuff I put into bags after I clean them. And then the way to pop these off is I usually just get myself a pair of curved needle nose pliers and just kind of do a little bit of a pry like that, and then they usually pop on out. There we go. Let's see, is this a stock cam or is this a hot cam? These look stock. All right. Yeah, these are stock cams. The guy said that they were hot cams, I guess. They don't look like hot cams to me. That bucket looks a little torn up. Yeah, we're gonna need to put buckets in it too. Removing the head bolts, these are going to be 14s. You're going to have these two right here that are 10s. When it comes to loosening the head bolts, you always want to do them in a crisscross, but a little bit at a time. You don't want to loosen one all the way and then loosen the other one all the way, because that can actually warp your head. And if the heads on these get warped, it's not as simple as just getting them decked flat again. Unfortunately, it basically ruins the head, because if you were to just get it decked flat, the head is still warped where the camshaft goes on. So your camshaft might rub on this journal and then may not rub on this journal. And it basically causes the cam to shift sideways, and it just ruins the heads. Oh, there we go. And these head bolts are actually stretch bolts, so you do have to replace these whenever you do an engine rebuild or anytime you pull the head off, because they have a torque sequence. Basically, you do when retightening these, you tighten them down to, I think it's 24 foot-pounds, and then you loosen them back up and then tighten them back down to 14 foot-pounds, and then you do a 90-degree turn, I think 2 or 3 times in a row. I have to double check in the service manual, but that's why you have to replace those head bolts every time you pull the heads off of these. Little magnet in here to get the washers out of here. And of course, whenever you do tighten these down, you do have to use some sort of grease on the washers and on the threads in order to get a proper torque sequence on these. There we go. Perfect. My digital calipers are dead right now, so let's see, that is a 95 millimeter, so no, it's not a big bore. You're looking at, yeah, 95 millimeters, so that's stock bore. The timing chain is pretty crispy. Whoop. All right, inspect the cylinder. The cylinder actually looks, it's a little scored. I don't know if I can hone that out. Might have to replace the cylinder. But on these, typically what happens is the big end of the rod right here is usually the failure point. The crank bearings just go bad. See what kind of piston is this? Oh, it's a stock piston. to be disassembling the clutch side. First, I want to get this thing out of the way. So you don't need to pull this cover off unless it's leaking, then you can replace the gaskets on it. But I always just go with the outer perimeter bolts. You'll see what I do here in a second. So got some cool still in there. Even though I've torn down many of these engines, I still always bag the hardware for where it goes. Like you can see right here, this is clutch cover bolts, and I do that, like I said previously, so that way when putting the engine together, I'm not losing things, or things aren't getting all mixed up and so on. So, and of course there's one here too that goes all the way through. This should come off. If you can't get it off, you'll see that they have this little tab right here, and then there's another one right here that's actually specifically so you can pop the clutch cover off without any issues. And then there will be a rod and a little ball in here that you have to keep a watch out for. You'll see here in a second. I don't know if this magnetic thing helps or if it makes it more annoying. Some sticky, thick oil. Probably doesn't help that it's 50 degrees out right now. So you'll see here, so you're going to have a little washer, and then there will be a little bearing, and all this stuff should stay together. They're usually held together with snap rings, but there's the ball bearing I was talking about. And then to get the rod out, you can just go ahead and use a magnet, and then that should slide on out like that. And then you can put all this stuff off to the side. And I'll show you what I do for these here in a second. Apparently it's a 30 millimeter. This whole assembly should just slide on off of here, and there will be another bearing that you're going to discover, or it's like a washer more or less, not really a bearing, but there also is a bearing in there too. So you can see, oh, actually, yeah, my bad. So when you split these two clutch baskets, you will see there is a washer right here. And so you want to keep that in there. And I'll show you what I always do for these, is I always just put the clutch back together as if it's in the bike. So what I do whenever I am storing this away, while waiting for parts, is I'll put everything in like that, and then I will put all this like this, and those won't really be able to go anywhere. And then now I can just tighten these bolts up real loosely. Now you can just go ahead and set this somewhere out of the way, obviously wrapped up in a shirt or something where it's not going to get dust all over it. Either way, it's going to get new clutch discs and everything's going to be degreased in the end, but still, some people might end up just reusing their clutches and stuff depending on how old they are. And another tip I do too, figured I'd show this, is I'll set everything into the clutch cover itself along with this little ball bearing somewhere where I'll see it and it's obvious, so I don't lose it. Sometimes these shifters can get bent and they are literally impossible to get out. So best thing to do, if you do have a bent one and it is not coming out, no matter how hard you pull, don't try to force it. You're just going to have to cut it on the other side and then pull it out and just get yourself a new one. So I also like to set this inside the clutch cover as well, so that way it's with the clutch parts. So this is an idler gear. What I usually will do, I don't have any zip ties right now, but I've done this enough times, is I will zip tie all of these together just like that, so that way I know exactly how they went back on, because it is easy to accidentally put the washer on first and then that and not realize it during reassembly. So it's best to just put them like that and then zip tie it together. And kickstart assembly also can go in the clutch cover, and then there's also a little washer that's back there, as you can see right here. Whoops, I didn't have that in frame. So when you pull this out, there's going to be a little washer that's going to stay behind, and it's going to sit right there. You always want to take that and make sure it's with it as well, and just set this in the clutch cover. To give you an idea of what I've got going on here. So you can see it's like a plate full of food, but a plate full of engine parts. Once again, if you are new to this, what you can do, since the engine's coming apart, you can take brake cleaner too, and you can soak all this down to get it nice and clean, blow dry it, and then even take like a red paint pen and put a red mark on this one, and then do like a blue paint pen or a white on this one, and then that will kind of help you out as well too. I need to turn off that. I'll have to leave that in the video. Just went to turn my hose off and turned around and slammed into a pole. I built an awning not too long ago and already forgot it was there. So since I'm out of zip ties, I'm going to use some bread ties just for my own sake. And then I'll go like this. And what's nice about doing this too is you can actually take, once again, some brake cleaner. Say if you didn't already brake clean all this, you can take them off, and then you could just hold them like this and brake clean them or whatever, and it cleans them up really nicely. You can also use gasoline too. I've done that. Put gasoline in a good spray bottle and spray everything down. It's a very good degreaser. Just obviously wear a mask. Don't get too much of it on your skin. And then to save on bread ties, I'll just do that. So I will put all these into their own baggie. Another thing I probably should have pointed out too is if you don't have a service manual for these bikes, or for whatever bike, you can actually download them for free if you go to manuallibrary.com or Manuallib. I'll put a link in the description so that way you guys can actually use that if you are using this video. It's always good to follow service manual as well, just to make sure things are going how you want them to. I guess it's 27, or it looks like you can also use like a 30 on it. Usually if you've got a decent 1/4 inch impact, you can pop these out, no problem. The first thing you want to do though, of course, is pop this down. It's always good to buy new lock washers too, so that way, I mean, you can reuse these, but I always just kind of replace them anyways. They can be used, it looks like, up to 3 times, so depending on how you take them out, if you don't destroy them too badly. There we go, just like that. Now when you pull these off, you want to make sure you pull them all in the same direction, like this. And then you'll notice too, on the gears, it'll look like engraving with an F on one of them. That's usually stands for forward, front. This side goes out. You don't want to install it that way. Always goes this way. Sometimes these can be a pain to get out, but they will come usually with not too much effort. And this one's going to make me a wire to warm up that gear. So if you're having trouble getting this gear off, you do just like what I'm doing and just warm it up. Not too hot, but just enough to expand it around the crankshaft. And sometimes that does the trick. Let's see how long is that. That should be hot enough. Here it comes. There it goes. Like I said, sometimes heat is your best friend for this kind of stuff. So now what you want to do, put all these together like this, and then you put yourself a zip tie through there, and you will always know how it goes back on, because you took it off this way, it goes back on this way. And another thing, like I said, what's nice about these zip ties is you can hold this while you spray it with brake clean or whatever and degrease all that stuff. I always like to just go through and thoroughly clean everything and get all of the old oil and everything off of all the engine parts as much as possible anyways. Now, time to pull the balancer. Yes, it's a 7/8 will work, so it's a pick. And then you just go just like that, and it pops loose. Once again, paying attention to the orientation of all this stuff. This, you can just lightly tap that. See, it didn't really take much force at all. Just go like this. And I can go ahead and take a zip tie again and zip tie all of this onto here, so that way you know how to put it back together, assuming this is your first engine rebuild. The next thing you're going to want to remove on these is your shift drum mechanism, or your shift drum gear selector, so which is a 10. Somebody went a little heavy on the Loctite there. Jesus. I've been finding that a lot on this engine. There's a lot of little areas that have shitload of Loctite. So all this stuff's going to come out. It's going to want to pop out. There's going to be 2 springs and then some weird little metal things. These, you can see if they come apart, I'll show you real quick. See how I just took that all apart. I did that on purpose. Is you just put one spring in, put this little piece in there like that. And then this piece right here, you'll see a rounded and a square edge. Rounded edge goes that way. Some of them even have a groove right here, so it's kind of hard to get it backwards and whatnot. Once again, put this in like that, and these are back together. And then this piece goes on over it like this. I have it backwards, just like that. And then you can brake clean this off and throw it into a Ziploc baggie so you don't lose anything, along with these two guys, and then you're going to want to pull the shift select drum off too. I'll show you that here in just a sec. This, you can just take the impact driver. You don't have to worry about hurting anything. You can just make sure you get it all the way turned before you start hammering on it with the impact, and then it'll come out like that. You will not hurt anything in there if you're hitting it. Now if it's not coming, then stop, obviously, but that is how you get that off. In order to split the cases, this piece has to come out, and I'm going to set that over there, and then I will just put that in there as well. You don't need to take this out to split the cases. This is your little shift select stay. I'm not sure what the actual term for it is, but it keeps it in each gear. This is the detent that you're feeling whenever you shift your bike, whenever it clicks in and out of gears. That's what you're fighting against, is this spring right here. So the oil pump you can take out now if you want, or you can leave it in. I usually just leave it in, but I might just take it out to inspect it, obviously, because this is going to be a full rebuild. So I'm probably just going to replace the oil pump. I usually do, at least. Okay, so we've got basically everything on this side disassembled. So now we can flip this on over, and then we will pull the stator cover off and pull the stator and flywheel. Whoop. What are these two bolts to? Were these just laying inside the engine? What the fuck? Yeah, those were just inside the engine. Interesting. Okay, that's that's really interesting. So when I tipped this over, these fell out of the case. I wonder what those went to. That's really funny. I'm gonna have to let him know about them. Wow, I'm surprised they didn't destroy something inside the engine. I'm surprised they didn't get caught in a crank or anything like that. Very interesting. Before I pull that stator cover off, you can see I'm putting everything into a bag. That named a stator cover, bolts, keyway nut, and washer, because there's going to be a bolt, or I mean a nut, and then there's going to be a washer and a keyway that comes out of here. You could just stick them all to the flywheel too. That's usually what I do. There we go. So you can see here's the reduction gear for the starter. And then here's the last bolt. And then what I'll do, I'll put this back in here like that. Oops. Put it in the right way. And then I will just put this back on loosely. Now this cover should pop off. There we go. That's a little better. And then there's your stator. That is what causes your bike to have spark and charge and run lights and all that good stuff. That's what triggers your spark plug at top dead center, or well, close to top dead center. And then you got your exciter, which is what charges CDI, and then you have your regular charging coils, which charges your battery and like your lights and everything like that, and goes to your rectifier. This one should be a 17. Nope. 18. And this is where you're going to need a flywheel puller. Well, when you use one of these pullers, they will come with this little thing, which is called a crank saver. Even though this crank is apparently bad, it actually doesn't look bad. I just don't know where the metal's coming from yet. You want to put this crank saver on like that, and you want to screw it on, not all the way down, otherwise you will never get your flywheel off. See, if you put it down like that, you'll never get the flywheel. But if you back it off about 1, 2, 3 full turns, or 2 full turns, that should be more than enough. Now we can screw this guy on here Doesn't need to be crazy tight, just enough. Actually, I prefer it not to be super tight anyways. Forewarning, sometimes these come off very violently, so keep your face out of the way. Actually didn't come off as violent as I thought it would. There we go. Oops. So there's the flywheel. Here's your, well, there's the keyway I was talking about. It's a little moon shaped. You can see half moon shape. Put that into your flywheel if you want, or put it into the bag with your stator cover parts. Move your reduction gear. Make sure you remember which way it goes in, even though it does go in only one way. Pull this out. Oh yeah, look at that. Pieces of timing chain guide right there. So now you should be able to get the flywheel and balancer out. So you can see like the balancer right here, it'll only come out one way. If you look, there's a little flat spot right there. So whenever it's coming out, whenever you're pulling it out, you want to make sure it's facing like this, and then it'll pull out. Any other way, as you can see, you can try it all day long and you will never get it to clear this way or that way, but this way you'll always be able to get it out, just like that. And if you want to, you could screw the other half of the balancer gears onto this too, which I usually do, but just like I said, for the sake of the video, I figured I'd leave them. These two are 10 millimeters. These are your timing chain guide. That was loose. That should have been a little tighter than that. Pull the timing chain guide out. Check it out. Yeah, it's gonna get replaced anyways, but yeah, you can see right here, look at that. So I'll show you these guides. These guides are pretty screwed up. This one is chewed up really badly. I mean, here's a piece of it right there. And then this one right here, you can see where the timing chain was chewing into that. That should be perfectly flat, just like this, the rest of this. But there's a divot right there. And then this timing chain, and I've seen this a lot too, where they destroy the crankshaft right here. This timing chain guide gear right here, the teeth are completely trashed, but you can see your timing chain should not be like that. See how it's bunches up real easily? This thing should be nice and smooth. But yeah, so that's going to go off to the side and crappy broken parts. So now it's time to split the cases. This is where you'll want a couple of pieces of 2x4s, a couple blocks, in order to set the case on. So for your case bolts, you are going to want to use, this is a 5 millimeter, I think. Let's see, yeah, 5 millimeter. So whenever you have like a really tight bolt like this, a trick you can do on these cases, which these should not be this tight. Whoever assembled this did not use a torque wrench, obviously. And there's a reason that you want to torque these all down, not just because you want them all the same tightness, but main reason is the cases, you don't want them to be warped or anything like that, which they will. So when braking, hard to get bolts loose, you get an Allen wrench and a 1/4 inch extension, just put it in the end like that, and you can usually get the bolts to break free. Either that or you break the bolt or something. There we go. So at this point, usually what you do is you take 2 bolts, thread them into these bolt holes, and what they do is at the same time you want to work your way back and forth and tighten them, and they push against the crankshaft and it will separate the case halves. If you don't have that, you can actually carefully tap the cases in half with a hammer. It takes a lot of tapping, but eventually you can get it. I would go to the hardware store and get me some long bolts with this thread, but it's nighttime and there's no hardware stores open right now. So I'm going to do the old tapping trick. Beautiful. Oh yeah, look at that. There's some metal in there. Some nice little chunks of metal. And then here's more pieces of the timing chain guide right there, right by the oil pickup. And once again, if this is your first time tearing down one of these motors, at this point you don't even really have to remove the transmission if that's daunting to you. So as you can see, I've got the engine completely torn down. I've got the parts ordered up. And once again, if you are new to this, don't worry about pulling your transmission. As you can see, this transmission is all still in here. I just took some brake cleaner and just sprayed it out really, really good and just kept on soaking it down. And while it's kind of in that position too, and then also you want to do it while it's in that position, just rinse everything out real good with the brake cleaner, and then air dry it with compressed air, and you should be good to go. As you can see, once again, how clean all of this is. This is all nice and clean. And then here's the crankshaft. And you'll see right here, this can actually, so a bad timing chain on these Yamaha engines will render the crankshaft useless. So you have to buy a whole new crankshaft, or you can replace the web on this side. But you can see right there, see how chewed up where the timing chain rides on that. If you were to put a new timing chain in this, with the way those are, it'll just ruin a new timing chain within a minute. I mean, you could, like I said, you could rebuild this crankshaft by putting a new left crankshaft web on here. But the web itself, this, which is this piece of the crankshaft, you can buy it individually, but it's over $300. And then at that point, you might as well rebuild the rod, put big end bearings in there too. Those are like $80 or something like that for that. And at that point, you're almost $400 into it. Plus, if you have to take it to the machine shop, you're looking at $40 to $80 to have them press it apart and press it back together and everything. So at that point, you might as well just spend $450 on a crankshaft. I know it sucks. Hopefully, if you are new to this channel, you are going to like and you're going to subscribe. Thanks for watching, guys.